We've all played games we like. Games that made us laugh, games that made us cry, and games that made us feel romantic over some characters.
I want it so badly. Please!
And after playing those games, it's only natural to want to experience those feelings again. And once you find out that there are some past games in the same series by the same people, you throw your smackaroos at them, or part of the game. And once you play that past game, you realize it's straight booty cheeks. Like, that isn't the game that got you acting up all those years ago. But I've analyzed the data, I've done my research, and I can conclude that the shift from this to this is usually in the third game. Alright, so in this video, I guess I'll be like dissecting why this happens. Let's get into it. So me and my boy ChatGPT, we've created a list of like all the franchise games with a third game. My prompt for all of this was to get any game franchise that has had at least one release after 2010 and whose third game was released after the year 2000. And it's also in like at least a AA game studio, so we're not getting any random Indian games. The list of games is probably gonna be down here, so look at that. It's there. I did a little bit of editing to it myself. I added a couple of good favorites. I added Baldur's Gate 3, Fable 3. Yeah, you know, the works. And I decided to group these games into 3 categories and like 1 extra category. Oh wait, before I say anything, I want to just go into a little bit of a dive about why the third game usually changes stuff. Before we get into anything, we gotta understand why a third game is made in the first place. If you even get to a third game, and if you have a franchise, that's already a big accomplishment. That lets me know that the publishers, they're cool with it. They like your stuff. It's tasty. It's giving them money. It's giving them fans. It's giving them more. You first need your first 2 games to be at least palatable to have a third game. But with the third game, there's also a risk of repetition. If you repeat like too much, people aren't gonna buy your game. It's gonna suck. And then eventually it can compound, and that's gonna end a franchise. And the publishers, they don't want that. And they put that on the studio to change it up, spice it up a little bit. So the third game is usually a turning point in the franchise. Usually they try something new. They add a completely new technology. They make it worse. They make it completely worse. So the third game is usually the turning point. That's why it can feel so different from 2 games before it. The first category is the crap. The crap basically means that, you know, it's bad, at least compared to the other games in the series. The crap will usually have either lower sales than the other 2 games in the series, a lower Metacritic rating than other games in the series, or it'll just be lower quality, and I don't like it. Yeah. It's important to notice that the crap can like get a lot of sales, but it's still going to usually mark like an eventual downgrade for the series, right? Like, it's not a good point for the series to continue. And some series even end after the crap. Now, the next category I'm going to be judging is going to be called the franchise starter. Usually, the franchise starter is a good game. It sells a lot. And it's basically the opposite of the crap. So for these games, you think you're Far Cry 3. Far Cry, it didn't really know what to do with itself. It was like a sci-fi hybrid. Then it became like a hardcore survival action game in Far Cry 2. It was just weird. But Far Cry 3 is streamlined that, made it like an open world FPS, something few games had ever done at the time. It set the entire outpost and tower system. It made the next Far Cry games to be solidified as classics. It took an amazing villain too, Voss. And it seems that the rest of the villains in Far Cry were kind of modeled after Voss in some way, shape, or form. The other category I see is the Pinnacle. The Pinnacle usually, well, pretty much most of the time, doesn't have a game after it. Or at least not a full game. Sometimes they have expansions, which are amazing. I freaking love expansions. But the Pinnacle is usually, it redefines a genre in itself, or it sets a bar higher for not just the franchise after it, but for gaming as a whole. These games usually win awards. Let's be honest here. Some of them go to the Game Awards. Most of them go to the Game Awards. The key difference between the franchise starter and the Pinnacle is that the franchise starter is a lot more corporate in its stuff. The Pinnacle seems more art focused. It's trying to make a game that can redefine gaming. But the franchise starter, however good it may be, has one big goal in mind: to make money later on. That's not to say that games like Persona 3 or Far Cry 3 aren't good, but they still have a goal to make money. Baldur's Gate 3 and The Witcher 3, they still do have that same goal to make money, but they also have a larger overreaching goal to change the gaming industry as a whole. So they're kind of just in a different section. I love them. There's one last kind of subcategory that basically any game can be in. It's called the 3D. I've kind of seen this pop up a lot of time, especially in the third game for some reason. This game is usually the first in its entire line to be 3D. This is kind of just a weird thing that pops up. It's happened up more than often, so I thought I'd put that down. These games include Grand Theft Auto 3 and Fallout 3, obviously. I looked at some games more deeply, and I've kind of noticed patterns in here. The first thing was my problem with like naming stuff. First of all, the biggest problem was Pinnacle. For Pinnacle, I would assume there wouldn't be any more games in the list, but that was actually untrue. We have GTA 3 and Batman Arkham Knight. Yeah, basically, other than Baldur's Gate 3. That might have been too much, but I really do like Arkham Knight and how it just really expanded on the Batman formula. And even though it didn't really redefine the genre, I might need to do that. I didn't really have any other thing that was just for a general good ending game. So I need to improve that. Like, I probably should have had a category for a nice franchise send-off. There are also some games that I liked, like Borderlands 3 and Mass Effect 3, but the community just like hated, so I had to put them in like crap, which I didn't really like doing that, but it just felt like a research thing. But other than that, I think I did pretty okay. I'm probably gonna have like a link to the doc that I have all the stuff in. I have like entire text. I spent like way too much time on this, but you know, it's everything. So here's a list of all the games and in the category. And as you can see, I have about 20 franchise starters. I have 4 3Ds. I have 7 pinnacles, but 2 of them are slight pinnacles, so I don't actually have them as pinnacles. So 7 pinnacles and 2 slight pinnacles. And for craps, I have 9 craps. We have 24 actual games in there, and that basically sums them all up. Some games are in 2 categories for some reason. I assumed 3D would be the only thing you had like a multiple category in, but this actually happened for things like crap. Crap could be paired with franchise starter. The only reason I paired crap with franchise starter was because it had like good franchise starter quality stuff, but the community didn't like it really much. And I probably should have done like a better one for that. Like gameplay is good, but you know, kill me, I don't care. There are also a couple of ones that got franchise starter and 3D, obviously, but the biggest thing was franchise starter and pinnacle. Some people get franchise starter and pinnacle, which means that the pinnacle is starter a franchise, which honestly does make sense. If it's really good, it's gonna start a franchise. Like Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid was the only one that I feel like actually accurately ticked off all the big 3 good boxes. It was the first 3D entry in the Metal Gear franchise. It was really good, and it started a bunch of other Metal Gear games. So yeah, I feel like that's the only one I actually like was accurate on. The rest are kind of a little bit iffy, but I feel like with this data, we can really see what the third game can actually like do. So first of all, the third game is obviously a turning point. It either refines something like a lot, or it adds like a new mechanic, like in Persona 3 with social links. And you know, the interesting thing was, Pinnacle was usually reserved for stuff that didn't like actually add a new mechanic, but it just refined on the existing mechanics more. And Franchise Starter was usually on stuff that added a new mechanic, but stuff like that with that got franchise starter added a new mechanic would not really get Pinnacle. I feel like that's because people are trying out new things. They're not trying to ultimately refine it, which obviously makes sense. It's really kind of a gamble for most companies to make a third game in the first place. The third game, they either need to add something new that's going to be amazing, that's going to blow your minds, which is already very hard to do and has a high risk associated with it, which no. Or a third game can be a pinnacle. And the third game can thus refine everything as much as possible, so it is extremely satisfying to play, which is hard as well. I feel like that sort of mentality is very difficult for studios like Valve to pull off. There's been a big meme surrounding why Valve can't get to 3. I feel like if they wanted to do that, they would either have to introduce a new mechanic to the Half-Life, the Portal, the Left 4 Dead, whatever series, which risks alienating their longtime fans, or refine those games to be even better, which is hard because Valve games are really good. So when you already have a really good franchise, it is very hard to make a third game that surpasses everything. You either underwhelm your players with how refined it is, or you add a new mechanic that alienates them. So you can't really have this if you have a good series. So the best third games come from the series that need work, which I feel is interesting. It's refinement over adding something new. If you liked my video, be sure to smash that subscribe button. Oh my gosh, wait. If you like my video, subscribe maybe, like the video with the little like button. It really helps my channel. Also, maybe look at the Google Doc because I spent an ungodly amount of time working on that in this video. So I would really appreciate it if. Oh my gosh, it's calling me. Oh, I'm using a phone as a microphone, and I get spam calls periodically, which are very annoying. Give me a sec. Off. Boom. Yeah, that was annoying. So subscribe, look at the Google Doc, please, and leave a comment because I really want to improve my channel. I'm thinking maybe 100 subs by the end of this year. I think that would be a good goal for me. I want to expand past just gaming content into like this voiceover style. So comment how you feel I could refine it. And thank you for watching if you're here. I also, yeah, thank you. Bye. Love you. Yeah. Bye. 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 Most of this was unscripted, by the way. If you didn't notice that, that was, yeah.